Welcome back to Twilight Tale, where every night history becomes a quiet place, and the ancient world opens its doors just wide enough for us to wander peacefully inside. Tonight, we drift into the stillness of ancient Rome, long before sunrise, when the streets are cool, the city is hushed, and only a few gentle souls are awake to greet the day. In this sleep story, we follow a humble Roman baker on his calm journey before dawn. As he walks the quiet alleys toward his warm, glowing bakery, we'll listen to the soft echoes of Rome at rest, the distant splash of a fountain, the rustle of early morning winds brushing against marble columns, the first embers of the ovens beginning to glow. There is no rush here, just a peaceful moment in a world long gone, waiting for you to close your eyes, settle in, and drift deeper into the comfort of the past. When you're ready, let's step gently into Rome and let the night carry you toward rest. It is said that every city carries a secret breath, a quiet pulse that stirs just before dawn. And in ancient Rome, that breath drifted from a single glowing ember. Before the sun even imagined rising, before the first carts rumbled across the cobblestones, before the capital's marble awoke beneath the day's golden light, Rome lay draped in an indigo hush, still, serene, and holding its memories like a sleeping giant. Houses curled into themselves, alleys rested like narrow rivers of shadow. Even the mighty Aventine Hill seemed to bow its dark outline toward the sky, as if listening for something older than morning. And tucked beside this sleeping slope, hidden behind a humble wooden door, a small bakery waited like a chamber of secrets. Inside, the darkness trembled softly around a single oil lamp. Its flame wavered like a timid star caught between breaths, casting halos that quivered across walls coated with centuries of flower and quiet devotion. The air was faintly warm, touched by a scent that lived somewhere between grain and mystery. Beneath this mellow glow, time loosened its grip, and the world drifted into a gentler rhythm. At the room's heart stood an oven, round, ancient, alive. Its clay mouth glowed faintly with leftover heat, as though the night itself had curled inside to rest. Some say these ovens were vessels of memory. Others believed they carried the breath of the goddess Vesta herself, keeper of the primordial flame. And perhaps both were true, for the longer one gazed at the soft, pulsing aura within its chamber, the more it felt like a gateway, something older than Rome, older even than the stories whispered in childhood. The baker stepped toward it quietly, as if approaching a shrine. He was still young by the city's measure of years, though his hair carried a touch of early silver, brushed there by long nights and longer traditions. His movements were slow, deliberate, not from fatigue, but from reverence. For him, this hour was no labor. It was a ritual, inherited from hands long gone, hands that had stirred flour under moonlit roofs, hands whose names had dissolved into dust. He reached into a sack of grain, lifting a handful as though lifting moonlight. The flour caught the lamplight and shimmered in the air, pale as winter breath, soft as drifting ash. And as it settled into a bowl, the room seemed to exhale, welcoming the beginning of its daily ceremony. Some believed that the hearth of a Roman home held a spirit, one that watched, guarded, remembered. Others spoke of the lares and penates, tiny guardians who hovered near household fires, guiding families through storm and famine. Whether superstition or truth, every kitchen felt like a sacred gateway, connecting the mortal world to something unseen. This bakery was no different. As the baker mixed the flour with water drawn hours earlier from a cool clay jug, the dough took shape beneath his palms, like a living thing. Each fold carried a rhythm as old as agriculture itself. Each press of his hands felt like a continuation of a lineage stretching back into the shadows of prehistory, when the first hearths glowed in the caves of forgotten people. The room warmed. The scent of grain grew thicker, earthier. Shadows began to melt into curves and corners, revealing shelves stacked with woven baskets, wooden paddles smoothed by repeated touch, and small jars of herbs crushed long ago under summer sun. All of it felt softened, blurred, as if existing in the borderland between memory and dream. Beneath the silence, the oven's warmth deepened. Whispers tell us that flame is a form of memory, that when fire curls around bread, it is reciting the same ancient song sung to shepherds, farmers, wanderers, all those who once waited in the dark for morning to return. Perhaps the baker felt this. As he shaped each loaf, round like the moon, marked gently with careful lines, his expression softened into a kind of thoughtful peace. He moved as though guided by unseen hands, hands older, wiser, suspended somewhere beyond sight. This was not work, it was communion. Outside, the sky remained a vast seed of darkness, unbroken except for a thin, distant breath of light near the horizon. Leaves rustled on the slope above the bakery, stirred by a wind so soft it could have been imagined. And somewhere in the city below, a dog gave one lazy bark, as if deciding whether to wake. But inside, time continued its slow, sacred unfolding. The baker slid the first loaf into the oven. A soft sigh rose from within, like the exhale of a warm creature settling more deeply into its rest. The air thickened with the scent of rising bread, an aroma that seemed to carry with it the echoes of ancient feasts, quiet celebrations, and mornings lost to time. It is said that bread remembers, not in the way stone remembers, with permanence and weight, but in a gentler way, through warmth, nourishment, and the intangible comfort that lingers along the edges of human life. Bread is a humble witness, present at weddings, rites of passage, funerals, offerings to gods, gatherings of strangers. It holds the quiet ache of history. And so, as the loaves began to swell with heat, the bakery became a chamber of echoes. The baker paused, resting his palms on the flour-dusted table. His eyes drifted to the oven, then to the lamp, then to the simple tools arranged with almost ceremonial care. For a moment, he stood still enough that the lamplight seemed to fold around him like a cloak. Perhaps he felt the presence of those who came before him, men and women who rose before dawn, who whispered thanks to the flame before touching the dough, who believed that every loaf carried a fragment of hope. Perhaps he imagined the Vestal virgins tending the sacred fire in their marble temple, ensuring that Rome's eternal flame never dimmed. Perhaps she wondered how much of their quiet devotion had found its way into ordinary kitchens, shaping rituals that survived long after emperors fell. Or perhaps he sensed something simpler, that warmth, however small, is a refuge. As he moved again, preparing the next batch of dough, the room's rhythm resumed, steady, serene, meditative. The lamp flickered, sending little waves of gold across his face. The oven hummed softly. The shadows quivered, as if listening to his breath. Outside, the first faint murmur of birds began to tremble through the air. It was still dark, but the sky was loosening, stretching gently into the promise of morning. A pale wash of blue crept behind the rooftops, brushing them with a color too faint to be named. The city remained asleep, unaware of the quiet miracle unfolding within the modest bakery. The baker removed the first loaf, now golden, steaming, fragrant. He set it gently upon a wooden board, and for a moment the rising steam curled upward like a prayer. In the lamplight, it looked almost celestial, the ghost of warmth drifting toward the rafters. He lifted the loaf slightly, testing its weight. Some believe that bread carries symbols, circles for abundance, scores for protection, warmth for blessing. And though the baker likely knew none of these tales formally, he sensed the truth of them in his bones. He had lived long enough to know that people needed small comforts, small certainties, a loaf of bread held between hands, a familiar scent drifting through an open window, a warm hearth that glowed at the heart of a home. Perhaps that was why he rose each night, why he welcomed the indigo quiet, why he let the oven's ancient warmth seep into him like a gentle tide. In baking, he was not just creating food, he was tending a continuity older than language. He shaped another loaf, then another. The oven breathed. The lamp murmured its golden song. And slowly the bakery brightened, not with daylight, but with the warmth of ritual fulfilled. As the birds outside grew bolder in their song, and as the faintest blush of dawn touched the world, the baker looked to the door. A strip of soft morning light had begun to creep beneath it, thin as a thread of silver. He paused. In that gentle moment, as the dough swelled with quiet life behind him, an old question rippled through his thoughts, one that had visited him many times before, though never with urgency. Does the hearth shape the people? Or do the people, in their endless longing for warmth and safety, shape the hearth into something divine? He did not know. Perhaps no one did. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Some mysteries warm us simply by remaining unanswered. He turned back to the oven, placing the final loaf inside. The clay chamber glowed, soft and steady, as though acknowledging his unspoken thoughts. A faint warmth wrapped around him, neither forceful nor fragile, just present, like an old friend. Outside, the city finally...
It is said that some places never truly fall asleep. They merely drift into a quieter realm, somewhere between memory and sigh, where echoes linger like faded constellations. And in the deep hours before dawn, when Rome folds itself into a robe of indigo and silver, the Forum becomes such a realm, half temple, half dream. On this night, clouds move slowly across the sky, their edges brushed with the faint glow of hidden stars. Moonlight spills gently upon the ruins, turning each fractured column into a pale rib of the ancient earth. The wide stones of the Forum, worn smooth by the passage of countless footsteps long since stilled, seem to hold their breath, as though listening for a voice too old to be named. Into this sacred hush wanders the baker. He carries an empty basket, light enough that it barely shifts the air as he walks. He has no clear reason to be here, not at this hour, not upon these stones whose stories tower over him like soft watching giants. But sometimes a place calls without speaking, and a heart responds without understanding, and so he follows the quiet pull that draws him deeper into the Forum's sleeping chambers. The moon rests directly above him, a cold silver coin suspended in the sky. Its light flows down the broken flutes of the columns, marking them with a faint celestial glow. Shadows gather at their bases like pools of ink, deepening the mystery of every curve and crevice. As the baker steps between the ruins, we sense the old pulse of the Republic beneath his feet. It thrums gently, like the echo of sandal steps fading through time. Once, these stones held debates that shaped empires, vows whispered in trembling hope, judgments carved into the lives of strangers. But tonight, all is softened. All is veiled. Only the faint hum of what once was remains, drifting like a thin strand of incense through the night. He pauses before the arch of Saturn's temple, its silhouette glowing faintly in moonlit silver. The arch rises above him, tall and hollow, like a whisper left behind by a god who stepped away long ago. Beneath its curve, the air feels different, cooler, older, as though carrying the last breath of an ancient winter. It is here that the memories begin to stir. Not his own, though they move through him with such intimacy he could mistake them for inherited dreams. Whispers tell us that stones collect what we forget, storing the softest fragments of our days in their quiet, patient depths. And as he stands in the moonlit archway, the baked-in silence of centuries loosens, releasing thin threads of memory. He sees, just for an instant, a merchant counting coins in the shade of the temple steps. His fingers move swiftly, guided by habit, though the coins no longer gleam. Then the image dissolves like smoke. A scribe appears next, bent over a wax tablet, the faint scratch of his stylus echoing like a tiny heartbeat. His expression is focused, almost reverent, though the words he writes melt into the shadows. Then priests, 3 of them, lifting small offerings toward a presence unseen. Their robes swirl like drifting clouds. Their faces are indistinct, blurred by the veils of time. Their voices rise, but the words do not reach us. Only the rhythm remains, a pulse, a breath, a ritual without sound. All of it flickers through the baker as though he has stepped into the forum's own dreaming. He does not speak, he does not move. He simply listens, beneath the silence, beneath the shifting moonlight, beneath the layers of dust that cover everything yet hide nothing. Some say memories are like embers. They glow faintly long after the fire has gone. And here, in this sacred stillness, the forum's embers burn with a quiet persistence, refusing to fade entirely. The baker continues onward, passing under the gaze of statues whose faces have been worn down to smooth stone ovals. Their once weathered eyes no longer see, yet the weight of their presence lingers like a forgotten oath. The temples loom around him, hollow chambers where prayers once swirled like fragrant smoke, where doors opened to the unseen, where oracles murmured truths beneath trembling torches. Now, these rooms hold only dust and moonlight, yet somehow, in their emptiness, they feel fuller than ever. He steps toward the remnants of the Basilica Aemilia, where long, elegant pillars stand in patient rows, each one marked by the faint scars of time. Starlight catches on the marble's broken edges, giving the ruin an unearthly glow, as though the final fragments of a vanished empire are lit by a light that does not belong to this world. Here, the shadows seem almost sentient. They watch him gently, not with menace, but with curiosity, as though recognizing him not as an intruder, but as a listener, someone who does not come seeking answers, but rather a quiet space to breathe among the echoes. It is said that the forum is a place where time folds, where past and present brush against each other like 2 passing cloaks. And as the baker walks, he feels those folds overlapping, soft, delicate, refusing to be untangled. He moves slowly, following no path except the one the night seems to open before him. The air carries scents both familiar and foreign, a faint trace of damp stone, the dusty sweetness of old marble, and something else, something that smells like old scrolls and fading incense, like the breath of wisdom left untouched for centuries. Where memory fades, new meaning arises. He approaches the temple of Castor and Pollux, where 3 columns stand defiantly against the sky, bright with moonlight. These pillars, pale, elegant, impossibly tall, are said to be the ribs of an ancient celestial gate, holding open a passage between mortal time and divine silence. Whether the story is true or merely a rumor born from countless nights like this, no one can say. But as he gazes up at them, they feel almost alive, breathing with a rhythm too slow for human sensing. His basket still hangs empty from his arm, yet the emptiness does not feel lacking. It feels intentional, as though this journey was never meant to gather bread, but rather quiet truths, things that cannot be held but can only be felt, like starlight or memory or the soft weight of a world long gone. He drifts toward the center of the forum, where the ancient paving stones lie exposed like the pages of a forgotten book. Some are cracked, some are smoothed to gentle curves. Each one carries the faint, invisible residue of footsteps, legions, senators, lovers, strangers, thousands of lives intersecting across centuries in one sacred space. And beneath his own feet, he feels something stir. Not sound, not vibration, but a presence, the old pulse of the Republic, soft as a breath, faint as the echo of sandals on stone, persistent even now. He kneels briefly, pressing his fingers to the cold marble. For a moment, the world narrows into this single point of contact, skin against ancient stone. The moon hangs above him, the ruins watch in stillness, and he feels a thin thread of connection, delicate and trembling, as though the Forum is aware of him. Then, just as softly as it began, the moment passes. The night deepens, though dawn waits just beyond the horizon. A breeze glides through the ruins, stirring a thin veil of dust into the air. Under the moon's soft glow, the dust sparkles, suspended like a constellation born from the earth itself. The baker watches as the particles swirl, shimmer, and drift back down, settling once more into stillness. Perhaps it was never meant to be more than this, a quiet stirring, a breath of the ancient world brushing against the present. A reminder that some histories choose to sleep, not out of neglect, but out of reverence, and that in sleep they speak a language only silence can understand. He rises, turning slowly to take in the vastness of the Forum one final time. The columns, the arches, the broken walls, the open sky marked by the moon. All of it rests in a serenity so profound, it feels almost oceanic, deep, dark, endless. His basket remains empty, yet somehow it feels full. He walks toward the exit, steps gentle, each one leaving the faintest impression on stones that have known countless more. Behind him, the ruins remain motionless, holding their memories close. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, he has listened. As he disappears into the dim pathways leading back up the Aventine slope, the Forum returns to its dreaming. Marble breathes, shadows settle, the stars watch in quiet contentment. And the stones, those ancient, patient stones, hold their silence once more, choosing sleep over revelation, as they have for centuries.
It is said that every great city is born beside a river, and that the river, in its patient, winding way, remembers the city more faithfully than any stone or scroll. On this night, Rome leans softly toward the water. The day has faded into a pale dusk, the kind that does not end all at once, but loosens slowly, like a robe slipping from the shoulders of the sky. Along the edge of the Tiber, the air is cool and damp, carrying a faint scent of silt and old leaves, of clay and distant hearth smoke. The river moves in a long, unhurried breath, dark, reflective, a strip of liquid shadow threading its way through the sleeping city. The baker comes to the water's edge in silence. His basket is empty, his work for the night not yet begun. The ovens are still, the flour untouched, and yet his feet have wandered here first, drawn by something he cannot quite name. He pauses on the worn stones that slope gently toward the river, the soles of his sandals whispering against the ground. Before him, the Tiber drifts past, slow and shimmering, a restless mirror under the deepening sky. Moonlight has not yet fully risen, but the first faint silver is already gathering along the surface, catching on ripples, stretching itself into thin, trembling lines. Tiny eddies curl at the banks, turning bits of debris, twigs, petals, a stray feather, into small spinning worlds. In the distance, an arched bridge glows faintly where lanterns burn low, its reflection flowing beneath it like a second, more fragile bridge of light. Beneath the silence, the water sighs. Whispers tell us that the Tiber is no ordinary river, that it carries more than silt and driftwood. It carries secrets. It carries offerings. It carries the soft, unsteady weight of human hope. The baker steps closer, the hem of his tunic brushing against the cool night air. He looks down at the slow, dark current and feels a strange calm open inside him, wide and quiet as the water itself. He does not know why he has come. Perhaps it is the weariness of many nights spent beneath the glow of his oven's fire. Perhaps it is the soft ache of unspoken questions, the kind that do not need answers so much as a place to rest. Or perhaps, beneath all of that, it is something older, an echo of those who once came to this river to speak to what they could not see. It is said that the Tiber once heard everything. Flowers cast in gratitude, their petals spinning briefly in the current before being swallowed by the dark. Curses whispered in bitterness, scattered into the shallows and carried away, their sharp edges dulled by distance. Tiny votive statues, small hands, miniature feet, little figurines of clay, dropped into the depths as offerings for healing, protection, or simple mercy. Beneath this very water, the mud is heavy with such relics. Buried under layers of silt and time, they lie in quiet stacks, some whole, some crumbled, some worn smooth by the slow caress of the river. Hands that once reached for the gods, feet that once sought safe journeys, little faces that once looked up in sacred hope. The baker cannot see them, yet he senses their presence, as one might sense unseen stars beyond the clouds. He watches the surface of the river as the last traces of daylight drain from the sky. Above him, the first true stars emerge, marked by the thin crescent of the rising moon. Its reflection appears in the water, a pale, wavering coin, marked by each passing ripple. Marked by the moon, the Tiber seems almost celestial. The bridges overhead arch like half-remembered thoughts, their arches mirrored in the dark depths below. Each span feels like a passage, a quiet tunnel between worlds, this bank and that one, day and night, the living and the lost. In the faint light, the stonework looks ancient and soft, smoothed by centuries of wind and breath and footstep. Beneath the silence, the river listens. The baker remains still, his hands resting lightly on the rim of his basket. The city's usual sounds, voices, wheels, the distant clatter of life are muted, muffled by the hour. A drifting fog begins to rise from the water, curling along the banks like a pale, slow-moving veil. It wraps the world in softness, blurring the line between near and far, between what is present and what is recalled. In this suspended moment, the Tiber becomes more than water. It becomes a mirror of Rome's sleeping soul. He imagines the stories it carries, not as clear pictures, but as shapes in the fog, suggestions and shadows. There, at another time, an exiled king might have stood where he now stands, his sandals sinking slightly into the damp earth. Perhaps the king paused for a final look at the city that no longer wanted him. Perhaps he let the tears fall only when he turned to the river, trusting it to keep his grief hidden beneath its constantly moving surface. His last footprints, washed gently by the Tiber, would have vanished by morning, but the emotion of that farewell might still linger here, faint as starlight on the water. Not far along the bank, he imagines a pair of lovers. They step out from a narrow lane, cloaked in the anonymity of night. In their hands, a simple wreath of leaves and tiny flowers. They whisper to each other, their voices too quiet to disturb the air, and then, together, they place the wreath upon the river's skin. The current takes it slowly, pulling it away from the shore, carrying their silent promise downstream. Perhaps they prayed for a future, for the strength to remain together despite the world's shifting tides. We do not know if their wish was granted. We only know that the wreath sank eventually, its petals softening into the silt, its circle broken, but its hope preserved in some unseen way. Farther still, another night, another century, a mother stands with a small child resting heavy on her shoulder. She is tired, her back bent from work, her hands rough from toil. In her arms the child sleeps, face turned toward the river, lashes resting like tiny brushstrokes upon the skin. In her free hand, the woman holds a pinch of grain. It is all she can spare. With a breath that is almost a sigh, she scatters the grain into the current, a simple, trembling offering, for a safe harvest, for a winter that will not swallow them whole. The grain vanishes almost at once, invisible in the dark. but perhaps the river remembers. The baker closes his eyes and listens. The water laps softly against the stone, its murmur like a voice that forgot how to form words and now speaks only in breath and rhythm. Fog curls and uncurls along the surface, thinning in places to reveal streaks of starlight, then thickening again into a pale, shifting curtain. In this suspended moment, the Tiber becomes more than water. It becomes a mirror of Rome's sleeping soul. He imagines the stories it carries, not as clear pictures, but as shapes in the fog, suggestions and shadows. There, at another time, an exiled king might have stood where he now stands, his sandals sinking slightly into the damp earth. Perhaps the king paused for a final look at the city that no longer wanted him. Perhaps he let the tears fall only when he turned to the river, trusting it to keep his grief hidden beneath its constantly moving surface. His last footprints, washed gently by the Tiber, would have vanished by morning, but the emotion of that farewell might still linger here, faint as starlight on the water. Not far along the bank, he imagines a pair of lovers. They step out from a narrow lane, cloaked in the anonymity of night. In their hands, a simple wreath of leaves and tiny flowers. They whisper to each other, their voices too quiet to disturb the air, and then, together, they place the wreath upon the river's skin. The current takes it slowly, pulling it away from the shore, carrying their silent promise downstream. Perhaps they prayed for a future, for the strength to remain together despite the world's shifting tides. We do not know if their wish was granted. We only know that the wreath sank eventually, its petals softening into the silt, its circle broken, but its hope preserved in some unseen way. Farther still, another night, another century, a mother stands with a small child resting heavy on her shoulder. She is tired, her back bent from work, her hands rough from toil. In her arms, the child sleeps, face turned toward the river, lashes resting like tiny brushstrokes upon the skin. In her free hand, the woman holds a pinch of grain. It is all she can spare. With a breath that is almost a sigh, she scatters the grain into the current, a simple, trembling offering, for a safe harvest, for a winter that will not swallow them whole. The grain vanishes almost at once, invisible in the dark. But perhaps the river remembers. The baker closes his eyes and listens. The water laps softly against the stone, its murmur like a voice that forgot how to form words and now speaks only in breath and rhythm. Fog curls and uncurls along the surface, thinning in places to reveal streaks of starlight, then thickening again into a pale, shifting curtain. None of these images are certain, none can be proven or recorded, and yet, in this quiet hour, all of them feel possible. He begins to walk along the bank, his steps slow, unhurried. Stones roll gently beneath his feet. The river keeps pace beside him, its presence constant, reassuring. Bridges rise and fall ahead of him, framing different fragments of the sky, different patterns.
It is said that certain thresholds do not merely divide spaces, they divide time. And in the deep hush of night, when Rome lies wrapped in a velvet cloak of moonlit blue, one such threshold waits in silence. The arch stands alone at the far edge of the forum, half-shadowed beneath the drifting sky. Its stones, once triumphant, once bright with the sunlit pride of emperors, are now softened by centuries of wind and quiet. Cracks thread across its surface like pale veins. Dust gathers in its carvings like ancient breath. And yet, even in this softened state, it holds a presence so deep, so quiet, it feels less like a structure and more like a listening spirit. Tonight, its inner curve glows faintly with the moon's pale exhale, as though lit from within by a memory it has never quite released. The baker approaches slowly. His basket hangs empty at his side, yet somehow it feels heavy, weighted by an emotion he cannot fully name.
He pauses at the arch's shadow, standing just before the threshold where darkness and light blend into a silver-blue veil. The night is so still that even the smallest sound seems sacred. His breath leaves him in a thin plume of white. Above, a single star glimmers through the faint cloud cover, a quiet witness to the scene unfolding below. Something stirs beneath the silence. A feeling, a faint imprint of footsteps long faded. He stands perfectly still, letting the cool breath of the night settle over him. The arch's great curve rises above him like the ribs of an ancient creature, vast, quiet, endearing. In its presence, everything slows, thoughts soften, the world narrows, and time folds into itself like the gentle closing of a book. This place, this towering gate of stone, once roared with life. Processions passed through it in bright rivers of color and sound. Victorious generals, their armor gleaming, once marched under this very arch to the thunder of chanting citizens. Children once climbed its base to catch glimpses of banners waving like flames in sunlight. Priests lifted offerings beneath its shadow. Musicians played straining trumpets that echoed off its carved ceiling like notes cast toward the heavens themselves. But this was long ago. Now, in the dreaming hour between midnight and dawn, none of those sounds remain, except the faintest whisper of them, a lingering hum woven so subtly into the stones that it can only be heard by those who move slowly enough to listen. The baker steps forward. His sandal brushes the first stone beneath the arch. A soft sound rises, light, almost hesitant. He takes another step. And this time, the sound that returns is not quite his. It reaches him a moment too late, softened, doubled, as though another footfall, older, fainter, walks beside him, imitating his rhythm with a ghostly grace. He pauses. The night breathes gently around him. Moonlight glimmers along the edges of the arch, tracing patterns in the stone like thin threads of silver. The echo lingers, then fades. Whispers tell us that echoes are not merely sound returning, they are memories answering. As he walks deeper beneath the arch's hollow belly, the echo begins to shift. It grows rounder, warmer, layered with something unfamiliar. It is no longer simply the reflection of his own step, but something older, something that might belong to another century. The baker lifts a hand to the carved stone, touching it lightly. The surface is cool, smooth in some places, pitted in others. Beneath his fingertips, time seems to hum, a barely there vibration, like the faint murmur of ancient stories rising from deep within the marble. And in that brief contact, something glimmers at the edges of his mind. He sees shadows, not frightening, but soft, dreamlike. Legionaries marching in steady rhythm, their sandals beating a pattern of purpose across the stone. Citizens gathered with hopeful eyes, gazing upward as though waiting for a sign from the sky. A young emperor, his face half lit by the afternoon sun, lost in private contemplation even as the world celebrated around him. These scenes flicker like distant stars, near enough to illuminate the darkness, yet always beyond reach. They have no voices, no sound beyond the muted echo of their steps. Their colors are not vivid, but washed in the pale blue tint of memory. They move in slow spirals, drifting through the baker's mind like remnants of a dream upon waking. The arch holds them gently, not with force, not with insistence, but with the soft gravity of a place that remembers too much to let anything go entirely. It is said that stone absorbs emotion, that it keeps what we cannot. Beneath the silence, beneath the curve of the arch, The baker feels the weight of countless moments resting in quiet layers. Joy, triumph, fear, awe, all stacked like thin sheets of dust upon the stone, undisturbed yet ever present. He takes another step. Again, the echo follows, but now it sounds fuller, richer, as though multiple footsteps brush against each other in the air behind him. The hairs rise softly on his arms, not in fear, but in recognition. Something else moves with him. Not a spirit, not a ghost, but a memory waking. He closes his eyes. Behind the lids, images bloom gently, like petals opening beneath moonlight. Torches flicker in the hands of nighttime processions. Golden banners sway in a breeze long departed. Shields glint like molten sun under the arch's embrace. Voices rise in chants too faint to decipher. Scribes stand at the edges, their wax tablets catching the glow of passing torchlight. Women lift garlands scented with crushed herbs and summer dust. Children ride on the shoulders of fathers, eyes bright with wonder. The arch held all of this once. And now, in the stillness of night, fragments of those moments drift back, not to be understood, but to be felt. They move not in straight lines, but in spirals, circling lightly around the baker's senses, as though inviting them to share in their quiet endurance. He opens his eyes. The arch's inner curve glows faintly, marked by the moon's soft touch. Dust floats gently through the air, catching in the light, drifting like tiny suspended memories. In this strange, tender hour, the arch no longer feels like stone. It feels like a threshold. A place where the past leans close, but never quite touches the present. A place where time breathes in slow circular rhythms. A place where silence grows deep roots, anchoring stories that refuse to fully fade. He walks to the center of the arch. Here, the echo is strongest. His step lands softly, and the response swells around him, rich, layered, a second sound woven delicately into the first. It arrives not a moment later, but almost alongside his own footfall, as though sharing his step rather than reflecting it. He pauses. The night breathes gently around him. Moonlight glimmers along the edges of the arch, tracing patterns in the stone like thin threads of silver. The echo lingers, then fades. Whispers tell us that echoes are not merely sound returning, they are memories answering. As he walks deeper beneath the arch's hollow belly, the echo begins to shift. It grows rounder, warmer, layered with something unfamiliar. It is no longer simply the reflection of his own step, but something older, something that might belong to another century. The baker lifts a hand to the carved stone, touching it lightly. The surface is cool, smooth in some places, pitted in others. Beneath his fingertips, time seems to hum, a barely there vibration, like the faint murmur of ancient stories rising from deep within the marble. And in that brief contact, something glimmers at the edges of his mind. He sees shadows, not frightening, but soft, dreamlike. Legionaries marching in steady rhythm, their sandals beating a pattern of purpose across the stone. Citizens gathered with hopeful eyes, gazing upward as though waiting for a sign from the sky. A young emperor, his face half lit by the afternoon sun, lost in private contemplation even as the world celebrated around him. These scenes flicker like distant stars, near enough to illuminate the darkness, yet always beyond reach. They have no voices, no sound beyond the music.
It is said that markets hold the heartbeat of a city, but only at night, when the world has quieted, can that heartbeat be heard. And so, beneath a sky washed in pale dusk blue, before dawn even gathers the courage to stretch across the horizon, we find ourselves before Rome's marketplace,
a wide, woven chamber of stalls and shadows, sleeping beneath the moon. The air is cool here, soft, almost tender. A faint breeze stirs, making the awnings flutter like ghostly sails on a long-forgotten ship. Each movement is slow and deliberate, as though the fabric breathes. The baker steps into this stillness with reverence. His sandals whisper against the stone, and the quiet settles around him like a cloak of gentle night. The marketplace, usually alive with voices, laughter, and the spirited pulse of the city, now lies silent as a sealed scroll. No footsteps, no clatter of amphorae, no bargaining cries slicing through the heat of day. Only moonlight, only the hush of sleeping commerce, only the scattered remnants of lives passing through in daylight haste. As he walks, the woven awnings cast trembling shadows across his shoulders. Wooden stalls stand like empty altars, each holding its own small mysteries, some covered carefully by cloth, others left bare to the mercy of the night. Wicker baskets sit patiently atop counters worn smooth by trades long past. Small heaps of rosemary and dried figs release faint traces of scent, touched by the cold breath of the night air. Even in stillness, the place feels alive. Whispers tell us that markets never truly sleep. They simply soften. They become dreamlike, labyrinths of objects and shadows, where the hum of humanity fades into something quieter, older, almost sacred. The baker pauses beside a stall draped in deep clay-colored fabric. His fingers brush the edge, and dust rises in a thin, pale spiral. The scent of olives lingers faintly, an echo of the day's trade. He imagines the vendor who stood here, arms folded or raised in welcome, calling out prices with a voice weathered by years beneath the sun. Now that voice is gone, replaced by the soft murmur of night. He moves deeper into the market's sleeping heart. Here and there lie clues, small artifacts left behind in the haste of closing. A single broken bead, pale blue, no larger than a tear. A fallen fig, crushed slightly at the stem. A strip of parchment, curled inward like a whispered secret. These fragments feel like relics, not in grandeur, but in emotion. Tiny pieces of human life, woven with longing, effort, fatigue, hope. The baker kneels to examine the bead. It glimmers softly in the moonlight, star-marked, glowing faintly as though touched by a memory it refuses to release. He imagines the necklace it once adorned, worn by a child or a merchant's wife, perhaps gifted or bargained for during a moment of excitement. Now it lies alone, forgotten, yet holding the essence of an entire story concealed in its stillness. He sets it gently back upon the stone. Nearby, the fig rests, its skin dark and tender, edges glistening faintly with juice. It might have rolled away from a vendor's basket or been dropped by a hurried hand. He wonders who reached for it, an elderly man seeking a small sweetness, or a child tugging at a mother's dress for a treat. The fig, too, carries a story, softened now into the stones beneath it. And the parchment. He lifts it delicately, its edges brittle. No words remain, only dust, only the faint lines where ink once lived. Perhaps a merchant wrote prices upon it. Perhaps someone scribbled a reminder, a promise, a thought. Paper holds echoes long after the ink fades. It holds breath. It holds intention. He lets the parchment drift back down, and it settles like a feather. Beneath the silence, the marketplace waits. It reveals itself not as a place of commerce, but as a kind of temple, a chamber of exchange, not only of goods, but of emotions, hopes, quiet acts of courage. Some believe that buying and selling are simply rituals we perform to keep life moving. But in forgotten corners of the earth, markets are spoken of as altars where human needs are laid bare. Hunger, desire, comfort, fear, These are the true currencies of exchange. And in Rome, under the moon's sacred gaze, this truth feels undeniable. The baker continues walking. The moonlight folds itself tenderly over every basket and jar. Clay amphorae glow with a soft amber tint, warmed by the memory of sunlight, even in the cold of night. A ceramic bowl holds the remnants of dried herbs, their fragrance rising faintly like ancient incense. On one table, a cracked scale rests, its metal dishes reflecting the moon's pale breath. He touches one of the dishes, feeling the coolness seep into his fingertips. In daylight, this scale would balance weights and measures, deciding the worth of olives, spices, grain. But tonight, it holds nothing, yet feels heavy, with the weight of all the exchanges it has witnessed. The marketplace becomes a still life painting. Every object, every leaf, every jar, every worn plank of wood looks arranged by an unseen hand, placed with intention beneath the moon's steady glow. Shadows pool beneath counters. Dust collects in soft spirals. The breeze shifts the awnings again, and for a moment, the entire marketplace seems to breathe. The baker closes his eyes. He hears it, not sound, not movement, but memory. The murmur of countless bartering voices, layered upon one another, fading in and out like waves along a shore. The laughter of children chasing one another between stalls, the rhythmic thud of a potter setting down his clay jars, the clink of coins dropped into a merchant's hand, the warm hum of human life flowing through narrow lanes. All of these scenes shimmer in the air around him, translucent, ephemeral. But as quickly as they come, they drift away, leaving behind only the moonlight and the stillness. He continues walking. A row of pottery jars catches his eye, red clay, etched with faint patterns that look almost like constellations. He runs his hand along one, tracing the spirals and lines carved into its surface. The clay is cold now, but earlier it must have been warm from handling, touched by many hands. Whose hands? What did they carry in these jars? Oil, wine, water from the river? He imagines a procession of footsteps, feet shuffling along the same stones he stands on now, carrying burdens, carrying stories. The marketplace holds them all, pressed into its surface like impressions in wet clay. Marked by the moon, the place feels suspended between two worlds, neither fully awake nor fully dreaming. A cradle of memories. The baker stops near a stall where a woven basket lies overturned. A few stray almonds have scattered across the ground. He picks one up, rolling it between his fingers. Its ridges catch the light, creating tiny shadows. Perhaps a vendor spilled them in haste. Perhaps a customer knocked the basket aside accidentally. Perhaps someone reached for just one more almond, too distracted by conversation to notice what fell. He places the almond gently back with the others. At the far end of the market, a thin ribbon of cloth dangles from a wooden beam. It sways with the breeze, a faint, rhythmic motion like a pendulum marking time. The fabric is frayed along the edges, dyed with faded bands of clay red and dusk sky blue. It might have been part of a larger banner, or a vendor's decoration, or simply a scrap used to tie goods together. But tonight, it moves like a sign. Not a warning, not a message, just a reminder that even the smallest things hold meaning when observed in stillness. The baker stands beneath it. He watches it sway, left and right, left and right. The world feels very quiet. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And perhaps tonight, in this moonlit market, he is finally ready. A gentle wind stirs again. It travels along the row of stalls, lifting awnings, rustling leaves, brushing across the tables like the soft passing of an unseen hand. The shadows shift, and for a moment, the entire marketplace feels alive, yet not in the way it is during the day. The life here now is subtle, internal, woven from memories rather than motion. The baker steps back, taking in the scene as a whole.
The awnings, lifted by wind, look like sails ready to catch a celestial tide. The scattered goods resemble offerings left for forgotten gods. The moonlight becomes a blessing poured from the sky. The market, this place of trade, of necessity, of daily struggle, has transformed. Beneath the silence, it becomes sacred. A temple of lives intersecting, a chamber of hopes exchanged, a place where the mundane is touched by the gentle hand of memory. Perhaps it was never meant to be seen this way. Perhaps it reveals itself only to those who walk slowly, to those who arrive in the quiet hour before dawn, to those whose hearts carry a softness that mirrors the night. The baker inhales.
It is said that roads remember. Not in the way books remember, with clear lines and carefully kept words, but in the way stones remember, quietly, invisibly, holding the faint warmth of all who ever touched them. In forgotten corners of the earth, people whisper that certain pathways do not simply lead somewhere, they lead through time itself. Tonight, beneath a moon rising like a pale, unblinking eye, the baker steps onto such a road. The Via Sacra waits for him in a hush so deep it could be mistaken for breath. Its ancient stones, cooled by the long hours of night, shine faintly, soft pearls laid carefully into the earth by hands long returned to dust. Mist gathers in thin sheets along the ground, drifting like half-formed memories, curling around the stones as though the road itself exhales in sleep. The baker takes a slow step forward. His sandal brushes the surface with such gentleness that even the shadows seem not to stir. He touches the path as though entering a sacred chamber, a place where echoes are older than speech and where each stone might hold the imprint of 1,000 lives. Whispers tell us that the Via Sacra was once the beating heart of the ancient city, a thread of worn marble along which triumphs marched, processions swelled, prophecies unfurled, and prayers rose like incense. Here, emperors and beggars, soldiers and poets all walked the same path, their lives briefly touching in the quiet intimacy of footstep and stone. But tonight, all of that grandeur lies folded away. Tonight, the road is stripped bare of ceremony. It is simple, silent, reduced to its purest form. A pale line glimmering beneath the moon, weaving through shadow and memory. The baker stands still for a moment, letting the quiet settle over him. Then he begins to walk. His steps fall lightly, careful not to disturb the fragile stories resting in the seams between stones. As he moves, he imagines the great festivals that once surged along this path, crowds adorned with garlands, priests bearing sacred offerings, children perched on shoulders trying to glimpse the gods carried past in gilded litters. He imagines the humming chants that once rolled down these stones like waves, voices rising with hope, trembling with devotion, swelling with the ache of wanting something divine to notice them. But now there is only silence. Not an empty silence, but one filled with soft presence, as if the road itself is listening. The baker's breathing deepens, matching the slow rhythm of his pace. The mist thickens around his ankles, curling like pale serpents. Each step feels deliberate, as though he is walking not forward, but downward, descending gently through layers of time. Under the moon's soft gaze, the Via Sacra reveals its subtler truths. It is not simply a road of stone. It is a road of vows. Journeys begun, oaths sworn, dreams carried in fragile hearts, burdened steps taken in fear or in hope. Every stone seems to hold a shimmer near its edges, a faint glow that might be moonlight or might be something older leaking through, like distant starlight trapped beneath the earth. The baker pauses, placing a hand against a particularly worn slab. Its surface is cool, but beneath that coolness is a strange sense of pulse. Not a heartbeat, no, something softer, a hum, faint as a prayer whispered through cloth. He closes his eyes, and through his touch, scenes rise, not sharply, but like silhouettes behind thin fabric. A young soldier dragging his feet, dust rising around him, the weight of the future pressing heavy on his shoulders. A woman walking barefoot, carrying a clay jar to the temple, her steps slow with reverence. A senator beneath a heavy cloak, moving with purpose, though his hands tremble beneath the folds. Children darting between adults, laughter fluttering bright beneath the sky. Old men leaning on staff, their eyes shining with the last embers of wisdom and time. These visions fade quickly, dissolving like mist when the sun reaches them, but their feeling lingers. The baker continues. The road curves gently ahead, its stones turning silver where the moon touches them, and deep blue where shadows cling. To the left, a low wall rises, cracked and softened by ivy. To the right, steps lead upward toward broken columns, their outlines blurred by drifting fog. Everything around him exists in a soft veil, as though nothing wishes to intrude upon the sanctity of the moment. Far in the distance, the outlines of temples glow faintly, white shapes blurred at the edges, bathed in a thin wash of milky light. They seem suspended in dream space, hovering slightly above the earth, their foundations lost to shadow. Some believe that places touched by worship never fully join the mundane world again, that even when abandoned, even when silent, they remain half in this world, half in another, marked by the moon, held by the unseen. Tonight, the baker feels that truth as a breath upon his skin. As he walks, he becomes aware of something that cannot be named, a presence beneath the road. Not a voice, not a spirit, nothing so clear. Rather a suggestion, a feeling, subtle as the first stirrings of dawn. He slows his pace. His foot hovers above the stone. He lowers it carefully. And when it lands, he feels a pulse. Not physical, not to be touched. A memory pulse, a sense of passage, a quiet stirring of something that has known countless footsteps and welcomes another. The Via Sacra is not alive, not in the way of flesh and blood, but it is aware. It has witnessed too much not to be. The baker continues walking, though his pace is slower, almost hesitant, as though he fears breaking the spell. He looks up at the sky. The moon sits high, framed by thin drifting clouds that resemble scrolls unraveling in the heavens. He imagines someone, centuries ago, walking this same path beneath this same moon. Perhaps leaving a temple with an offering given, perhaps returning home with a heart slightly lighter, perhaps whispering a wish into the night, trusting the road itself to carry it forward. Where memory fades, stone remains. The baker reaches a bend in the path where the mist grows thicker. It curls upward, softening the outlines of everything, columns, walls, the edges of the road, until the world feels like a half-painted fresco. Up ahead, the temples glow more brightly. Their silhouettes stand like guardians of a forgotten era, their broken roofs marked with cracks through which moonlight falls in thin, fractured beams. Some believe that places touched by worship never fully join the mundane world again, that even when abandoned, even when silent, they remain half in this world, half in another, marked by the moon, held by the unseen. Tonight, the baker feels that truth as a breath upon his skin. As he walks, he becomes aware of something that cannot be named, a presence beneath the road. Not a voice, not a spirit, nothing so clear. Rather a suggestion, a feeling, subtle as the first stirrings of dawn. He slows his pace. His foot hovers above the stone. He lowers it carefully. And when it lands, he feels a pulse. Not physical, not to be touched. A memory pulse. A sense of passage.
a quiet stirring of something that has known countless footsteps and welcomes another. The via sacra is not alive, not in the way of flesh and blood, but it is aware. It has witnessed too much not to be. The baker continues walking, though his pace is slower, almost hesitant, as though he fears breaking the spell. He looks up at the sky. The moon sits high, framed by thin drifting clouds that resemble scrolls unraveling in the heavens. He imagines someone, centuries ago, walking this same path beneath this same moon. Perhaps leaving a temple with an offering given, perhaps returning home with a heart slightly lighter, perhaps whispering a wish into the night, trusting the road itself to carry it forward. Where memory fades, stone remains. The baker reaches a bend in the path where the mist grows thicker. It curls upward, softening the outlines of everything, columns, walls, the edges of the road, until the world feels like a half-painted fresco. Up ahead, the temples glow more brightly. Their silhouettes stand like guardians of a forgotten era, their broken roofs marked by cracks through which moonlight falls in thin, fractured beams. He feels a tug in his chest, not fear, not excitement, but the gentle pull of something ancient calling him to pause. He does. Mid-step, one foot on stone, one lifted, suspended in the cool night air. The silence deepens. It deepens so much that it becomes almost a presence in itself, a soft velvet.
It is said that some sanctuaries do not reveal themselves by intention, but by invitation, appearing only when the night is gentle enough and the wanderer quiet enough to notice the subtle shift of leaves. On this night, when the moon hangs low and soft over the sleeping city of Rome, the baker finds himself pausing beside a narrow alley where shadows linger like familiar spirits. Something nudges at the edge of his awareness, a twinge of curiosity, a whisper of intuition, a feeling that the air itself is urging him to look closer. He turns. And there, half concealed by laurel leaves shimmering faintly beneath silver light, he sees it. A small wooden gate. Simple, weathered, carved not with symbols, but with time. Its surface is worn smooth by countless seasons, rain, sun, wind, starlight, as though the world has passed its hands over it tenderly, again and again, without ever disturbing what lies beyond. The baker steps closer. The laurel leaves rustle, but only just, as if brushing against an unseen presence that lingers behind the wood. A faint fragrance lifts from them, earthy, warm, touched with something ancient. He rests his palm on the gate. It is cool, and yet beneath the coolness is a strange warmth, a pulse, not living, not human, but the quiet thrum of stories gathered in a single place. He pushes gently. The gate opens with barely a sound, swinging inward like the soft parting of a curtain. Beyond it lies a garden. Moonlight pours through the branches as though the sky has spilled a bowl of pearl-dusted milk across the ground. Vines twist around trellises, their leaves glossy with dew. The air is filled with the scent of blossoms, lavender perhaps, or night-blooming flowers whose names are lost to time, all mingling into a perfume that feels more dream than fragrance. The garden looks untouched by the world beyond the gate, as though Rome itself has forgotten this place exists. No voices reach here, no footsteps disturb the earth. It feels as though the garden holds itself still, waiting to be remembered. The baker steps inside. The leaves rustle again, not as warning, but as welcome. The path before him winds in soft, deliberate curves, like a thought half remembered, not straight, never sharp, instead inviting him deeper through gentle arcs that suggest intention rather than design. It is said that certain places are shaped by longing rather than architecture. They bend not according to human plans, but according to the quiet desires of those who once tended them. And this garden feels like such a place. As he walks, the baker notices small marvels tucked between shadows. A cluster of white blossoms glowing like stars spilled upon the soil. A vine draped over a low wall, its leaves trembling with secrets. A small bench carved from pale stone, worn smooth in the middle, its edges softened by time's patient hand. And then, marble fragments, half buried. One shaped like the curve of a cheek, another like the edge of a robe, another, perhaps, the broken base of a column. They glimmer faintly in the moonlight, like shards of a lost constellation that fell quietly into the earth and never rose again. The baker kneels beside one shard. It is smooth on one side, rough on the other. What statue once stood here? What figure, hero, poet, goddess, watched over this sanctuary before crumbling into the soil? He cannot know. But something in the fragment's cold surface makes him feel as though he is holding a memory, not an object. He places it gently back. The path guides him onward, not forcefully, not insistently, but with a soft persuasion, as though whispered by the rustle of leaves and the movement of shadow. He follows. The garden deepens around him. Vines hang like silken veils from branches shaped in archways. A small pool reflects the moon, its surface disturbed only by the occasional ripple from a drifting leaf. He feels, strangely, that this is a place where the boundary between worlds grows thin, where mortal breath meets the quiet exhale of the divine. Whispers tell us that long ago, philosophers sought gardens like this, hidden, secluded, wrapped in nature's gentle embrace, to ponder the secrets of the cosmos. Poets came to chase inspiration through soft petals and winding paths. Dreamers came simply to breathe a little lighter beneath the gentle watch of the moon. Perhaps some of them came here. Perhaps their quiet conversations still hang in the air, softened over centuries into the fragrance of the blossoms. The baker drifts toward the stone bench at the garden center. He sits. The bench is cool at first, then warms beneath his touch, a reminder of how many have sat here before him. He closes his eyes. And for a moment, he senses them, not clearly, not as figures or faces, but as presence, as faint impressions upon the air, like breath disappearing in winter. Unnamed poets, philosophers whose thoughts once shimmered like torchlight, dreamers who looked to the same moon and whispered their fears, hopes, and half-forgotten desires. Their presence lingers, not to speak, but to listen, to share this stillness, to welcome him into a lineage of quiet contemplation longer and wider than memory itself. Time drifts. Minutes, perhaps hours, he cannot tell. The moon rises higher, casting its glow in long, thin beams through the branches. They fall across the marble shards, turning them into fragments of moonlight rather than stone. He watches the leaves sway, slowly, almost ceremonially. Each movement feels intentional, as though the garden itself performs a ritual, welcoming him, comforting him, reminding him that beauty exists even in shadows, even in ruin, even in the soft quiet between footsteps. The air here carries a serene melancholy, a sense that the garden has known loveliness and loss, growth and decay, joy and departure. Beauty, like all things, ripens, and when it fades, it does not vanish. It transforms into memory, into scent, into the soft glow of moon on stone. Perhaps this is what the garden holds, not simply plants and broken statues, but the very essence of change. The baker feels it within him, a stirring of acceptance, of tenderness, of deep quiet. Eventually, gently, he rises.
He walks back through the winding paths, the vines brushing against his shoulders like soft farewells. The laurel leaves rustle again, a whisper of sound, barely a breath. He steps out into the alley. The gate swings slowly behind him. It closes with almost no sound, a soft click, delicate as the closing of a locket. When he turns back, the laurel leaves hide it once more, as though the garden were only a dream resting behind the veil of night. He stands for a moment, listening to the silence, and in that silence is the faintest echo, not of words, but of peace. A peace untouched by the world beyond, a peace offered to him for a brief, gentle moment. Perhaps the garden was never meant to be found easily. Perhaps it appears only to those who need it and vanishes when its gift has been given. He breathes deeply, then walks onward into the night, carrying with him the scent of blossoms, the memory of moonlit vines, and the quiet blessing of a sanctuary hidden behind laurel gates. Behind him, the alley falls still, the leaves settle, the moonlight shifts, and the garden remains, unseen, unspoken, undisturbed, held in the soft cradle of the night.
It is said that every dwelling, no matter how humble, contains a single point of light that remembers us. A flame, a window, a threshold, a breath. Something small and steady that keeps watch long after footsteps fade. Tonight, in the heart of a Roman insula, that watcher is a lamp. A simple clay vessel, its surface uneven from years of handling, rests upon the landing of a narrow stairwell. It burns with a small, unwavering flame, quiet, golden, patient. And around it, the insula sleeps. Stone walls absorb the night like deep lungs, breathing slowly in and out. Wooden beams creak softly, settling into their midnight posture. Behind closed doors, families rest, their dreams drifting like pale currents through the air. The baker enters the stairwell with careful steps. He carries no bread at this hour, no tools, no burden, only the soft weariness of a man moving through the world before dawn has quite awakened. As he pushes open the heavy exterior door, the stairwell greets him not with silence alone, but with a gentle glow. The lamp. The small guardian. A witness to countless nights, its flame clings to the wick with humble devotion, a quiet sentinel, refusing to falter. The baker pauses. The flame trembles once, acknowledging him, or perhaps greeting the shift in air. He begins to ascend. Each step beneath his feet sighs with a familiar creak, a sound that has echoed through this insula for generations. The stairwell is narrow. Its stones are worn into soft dips where feet have passed, each depression a memory carved into the living architecture of the place. The walls rise close beside him, rough plaster, chipped in places, marked by scratches and faint lines, small notches made by hands long forgotten, some purposeful, some accidental. Each one a fragment of life left behind, a gesture, a moment, a trace that time has not swept away. The lamp's light strokes these marks gently, making them shimmer like tiny constellations in a sky of clay and dust. Whispers tell us that these simple scratches carry more truth than the grand reliefs carved in marble villas. They tell not of conquest, but of living, the daily endurance of ordinary souls. A child tracing a shape with a stick, a tenant dragging a basket along the wall, a mother shifting a pot, leaving a faint arc of soot. Two lovers leaning too close, brushing shoulders, leaving impressions deeper than stone. In the day, the insula is crowded, noisy,
alive with the clatter of amphora, the clamor of voices, the beating rhythm of countless lives woven into one structure. But now the building is at rest. And in the tender quiet of this hour, the insula is transformed. It becomes a sanctuary, a sacred vessel holding the vulnerability of sleep. As the baker climbs, he glimpses small alcoves carved into the walls. Some contain pottery jars sealed with wax. Others hold nothing but shadows. A few house shrines, tiny household altars, their surfaces dusted with flour, olive oil, ashes, symbols of protection and gratitude. He walks past a door, slightly ajar. Inside, he sees only darkness, but he hears the faint whisper of sleep, a small exhale, peaceful, soft. A family resting behind thin wooden walls, their dreams suspended in the same quiet air he breathes. He moves on. The lamp's glow follows him up the stairs, shimmering across the edges of his tunic, warming the rough iron rails beneath his hand. At the next landing, another doorway waits, this one fully closed. The wood bears a deep notch shaped like a spiral. It might have been carved intentionally, or it might be the slow work of time. Either way, it holds his attention. Spirals, some believe, are symbols of the soul returning to itself, a reminder that all journeys wind inward as much as outward. Perhaps someone who lived here believed that too. Perhaps the door remembers their touch. He reaches the window. A small, rectangular opening carved into the wall, framed with weathered stone. It allows just a ribbon of moonlight to enter, falling across the stairwell like a celestial brushstroke. The baker stops. Moonlight and lamplight meet here, two worlds merging in silence. One, cold and distant, the breath of the night sky. The other, warm and near, the breath of human hands. Together, they fill the narrow passage with a gentle glow that feels almost sacred, as though the corridor has become a thin place, a seam between realms. It is said that when natural and human-made light touch, a kind of truth reveals itself, small, fragile, but deeply felt. The baker leans closer, resting his hand on the windowsill. He sees the street below, quiet, silver-washed. Shadows of rooftops tilt across one another like folded scrolls. The city sleeps, the insula breathes, and he, for a moment, feels held by both. He lets the moonlight brush over his fingers. The stone beneath his hand is cool, but not unfriendly. It holds the memory of countless hands that lingered here, hands seeking fresh air, seeking a moment of quiet, seeking the reassurance of the sky. Perhaps standing here was once a nightly ritual. A tenant, weary from their day, leaning out to let the night wind cool their face. A mother rocking her child, soothing them with a view of stars. A poet searching for words, only to find them carried away by the breeze. The baker stays until the moment feels complete. Then he turns. The lamp still burns on the landing below, its flames steady, unchanged. It stands small yet resolute, like a star pinned to the stairwell, a fixed point in the swirling mosaic of night. He descends. As he walks, he brushes his hand along the wall, feeling the softened texture of plaster, the dips worn by countless touches. The insula welcomes his steps with familiar creaks, not warnings, but acknowledgments. He passes the alcoves again. He passes the spiral-marked door. He passes the silent rooms breathing gentle warmth. The lamp glows brighter as he approaches, though its flame has not changed. Perhaps it is simply nearer. Perhaps he has begun to see it differently, not as a lamp, but as a guardian. He kneels slightly, examining the way the flame bends, curves, shapes itself around the wick. There is something tender in its persistence, something sacred in its quiet duty. It has watched tenants come and go. It has guided weary feet. It has lit countless midnight journeys to fetch water, to soothe a crying child, to sit alone with one's thoughts. A small relic of human resilience. He reaches toward it, palm hovering just close enough to feel the warmth, not to adjust it, not to disturb it, only to acknowledge it. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and tonight, this flame speaks in silence, of safety, of presence, of the gentle truth that even the smallest light can hold an entire world of stories. He stands. He steps past the lamp. The flame flickers once, a farewell, a blessing, then steadies again. He reaches the heavy door of the insula, pushes it open, steps out into the cool Roman night. Behind him, the lamp remains exactly where it was, burning softly, patiently, an unwavering guardian of those it shelters. A small star pinned to a corridor of stone and shadow, promising protection, even unobserved. Perhaps it was never meant to be noticed. Perhaps it was meant only to shine. The door closes gently behind him. The night engulfs his steps, and the lamp continues its quiet vigil, holding the darkness at bay until morning comes.
It is said that in forgotten corners of the world, there are gods who sleep with their eyes open, watching not with longing, but with patience, waiting for any soul who still remembers how to look. Tonight, under a moon veiled by drifting clouds, the baker finds himself drawn toward one such place. He walks along a narrow path where the earth has grown soft with age, where the night smells of moss and cool stone, and where silence gathers like a folded cloak. The city's distant murmurs fade behind him. Rome becomes a distant dream. Only the soft crunch of soil beneath his sandals remains, a rhythm that carries him toward something ancient, something nearly erased. There, just beyond a tangle of trees, he sees it. A small shrine, neglected, sagging, but dignified in its decay, as though held upright not by structure, but by memory. Moonlight spills across its roof, a gentle wash of silver that highlights cracked tiles and the soft green drapery of moss. The steps leading to its entrance are weathered, edges blurred by rain, roots, and time. Few Romans remember the gods once worshipped here, not the gods of thunder or prophecy, not the grand guardians of war or harvest, but the quiet ones, the deities of thresholds, of small wins, of household corners, of humble tasks. Gods whose names never filled stone inscriptions, but who lived in whispered thanks, in daily rituals too subtle for history to record. The baker feels this truth as he approaches. A hush settles over the clearing, not empty, but full of delicate expectation. And then he sees it, a shadow, not cast by tree, nor by shrine, nor by anything he can touch or name. It lingers at the shrine's side, subtle, still, as though waiting for someone to acknowledge it. Its edges are soft, not sharp like ordinary shadows. It seems almost to breathe, like a quiet presence leaning against the stone. The baker stops. He bows his head slightly, not out of fear, but out of instinctive respect. It is said that shadows sometimes outlive the beings who first cast them, that places once steeped in faith retain a faint imprint, a spiritual silhouette, left behind when belief moves on. He steps forward slowly. The air changes. It thickens, not in darkness, but in something akin to memory. A gentle hum trembles along his skin, like the faint vibration of a distant chant. He sees, near the shrine's base, the remnants of old offerings, grains scattered like pale sand,
A tiny wooden carving, its features worn to a shapeless blur. A handful of petals, dried to thin curls edged with dust. These offerings have not been placed recently. Time has carried away their meaning, their freshness, their purpose. But something else remains, a soft echo of devotion. He kneels. His fingers brush the cracked stone relief on the shrine's lowest step. It depicts something unrecognizable now, perhaps a hand raised in blessing, perhaps a vessel, perhaps a symbol lost to erosion. But as his touch lingers, the shadow shifts. He starts, not in alarm, but in wonder. There is no breeze, no movement in the trees, and yet the shadow adjusts itself, as though turning slightly toward him, as if acknowledging his presence. Its edges are soft, not sharp like ordinary shadows. It seems almost to breathe, like a quiet presence leaning against the stone. The baker stops. He bows his head slightly, not out of fear, but out of instinctive respect. It is said that shadows sometimes outlive the beings who first cast them, that places once steeped in faith retain a faint imprint, a spiritual silhouette left behind when belief moves on. He steps forward slowly. The air changes. It thickens, not in darkness, but in something akin to memory. A gentle hum trembles along his skin, like the faint vibration of a distant chant. He sees, near the shrine's base, the remnants of old offerings, grains scattered like pale sand, a tiny wooden carving, its features worn to a shapeless blur, a handful of petals dried to thin curls edged with dust. These offerings have not been placed recently. Time has carried away their meaning, their freshness, their purpose, but something else remains, a soft echo of devotion. He kneels. His fingers brush the cracked stone relief on the shrine's lowest step. It depicts something unrecognizable now, perhaps a hand raised in blessing, perhaps a vessel, perhaps a symbol lost to erosion. But as his touch lingers, the shadow shifts. He starts, not in alarm, but in wonder. There is no breeze, no movement in the trees, and yet the shadow adjusts itself, as though turning slightly toward him, as if acknowledging his presence. Whispers tell us that forgotten gods do not resent their fading. They simply wait, not for worship, not for sacrifice, but for remembrance, for any soul willing to sit quietly in their presence, to breathe with them, to let their existence be felt. The baker closes his eyes. He listens. Moonlight settles across the shrine with gentle weight. The air hums softly, like a distant chord held just beneath hearing. If he strains, he almost senses voices, not words, not language, but tonal echoes, the emotional residue of prayers whispered long ago. In the dreamlike space behind his eyelids, scenes unfurl. A woman kneeling here, her hands cupped together, offering a pinch of flour, her breath trembling with gratitude. A shepherd, leaning his forehead against the stone, asking for safe passage through a storm. A child, lifting a tiny carved figure with both hands, placing it at the shrine's base with solemn sincerity. A traveler, pressing a palm to the wall, silently thanking the god of thresholds for safe return. These visions fade as quickly as they rise, but their emotional essence lingers, warm, fragile, aching. He opens his eyes. The shadow remains beside him, still, but somehow lighter, a companion of sorts. He studies it. It does not reach for him. It does not grow or shrink. It simply is, patient, humble, as though yearning for acknowledgement, but asking for nothing. The baker stands. He steps closer to the shrine's entrance. The stone pillars flanking the doorway are chipped, their carvings worn faint. Vines curl around them like soft green spirals. Inside, The shrine is too dark to see clearly. Only the faint scent of earth and old incense reaches him, a fragrance that feels almost oceanic in depth, layered with centuries of breath. He does not enter. He does not need to. The mystery is not inside the shrine, but around it, in the shadow, in the offerings, in the quiet that folds the clearing like a silk shroud. It is said that forgotten gods do not guard places, they become them. This shrine feels alive, not with presence, but with memory, a memory that curls around the baker like mist, softening the edges of the world. He steps back and looks at the shadow once more. It has not grown, it has not vanished, but it feels eased, as though relieved to have been seen. He wonders, is it the shadow of a god whose name is lost, or the shadow of countless prayers layered upon one another, woven into a single dark shape by time? Perhaps shadows are simply the souls of places made visible. Perhaps they carry what humans forget. He moves a little farther back, giving the shadow room, offering a gesture of gentle farewell. The shrine stands quiet, bathed in moonlight, held by the roots that have embraced its foundation. And in that glow, the shadow softens again, not fading, not dispersing, but dimming in a way that feels peaceful. The baker feels something settle inside him, a tender melancholy, like the echo of a song he once knew in childhood. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Tonight, he has listened. He turns toward the path. The shadow remains beside the shrine, unmoving, untroubled, acknowledged. He begins to walk. Each step feels lighter, as though he carries not the weight of the shrine, but its blessing, not the burden of memory, but the gentleness of having touched something sacred, even for a moment. At the edge of the clearing, he looks back. The shrine stands exactly as before, moss draped like velvet, steps softened, roof sagging slightly under the moon's pale caress, and the
It is said that circles are the oldest symbols in the world. Older than carved stone, older than written scrolls, older even than the names we whisper to the stars. Circles mark the heavens and the earth alike, the moon, the sun, the turning of seasons, the endless return of dawn after night. And tonight, in the quiet workshop behind the baker's small dwelling, another circle waits. Not celestial, not divine, but humble, a heavy millstone resting in stillness. The room around it is dim and warm, lit only by a small oil lamp whose flame trembles like a tired heartbeat. Dust hangs in the air like soft, suspended breath. Shelves hold clay jars filled with barley and wheat, their lids sealed with beeswax. Bundles of dried herbs hang from the rafters, bay leaves, thyme, rosemary, their fragrance faint but comforting. The wooden floor bears scratches from decades of work, each mark a quiet reminder of human hands shaping one small corner of the world. The baker steps inside. He has walked into this room countless times, yet tonight something feels different. The millstone, silent, motionless, seems to hold a quiet alertness, as if listening for him. His sandals brush softly against the floor, and the sound feels like the first word of an unfinished prayer. The millstone rests in its wooden frame, its circular groove smooth from centuries of turning. The wheel is large, heavy, made of pale stone streaked with faint lines, marks left by wind, by sand, by years of grinding grain into nourishment. He approaches it slowly. In the lamplight, the stone gleams with a dull, sacred glow, as though it remembers its purpose even in sleep. He places both hands upon its surface. The stone is cool, cool in a way that feels ancient, like the touch of forgotten earth deep beneath the surface. His fingertips trace the curve of the groove, following its circular path, smooth, unbroken, eternal. And he feels it. Not a sound, not a vision, but a memory. A memory not his own. It is said that objects hold echoes, the subtle imprint of every hand that shaped them, every moment they were used with intention. As the baker stands there, hands upon the stone, he senses countless others. Women grinding barley at dawn, their arms strong with daily labor. Old men pressing their weight into the handle, murmuring small, private prayers under their breath. Children watching, eyes bright with curiosity, impatient to help, though not yet strong enough. Travelers who stopped for a night, offering their grain to be milled for morning fare. Farmers with sunburnt faces, bringing the harvest home. Each turning of the wheel a meditation, a quiet ritual, a hope for nourishment in the days to come. He closes his eyes. For a moment, the workshop dissolves into warm darkness, and through that darkness, an image rises. Fields rolling under dawn's first blush, their golden heads shimmering like tiny lanterns in the wind. The rustle of wheat spreads like a soft hymn across the land. Farmers walk between the rows with slow, reverent steps, feeling each stalk between their fingers, as though greeting old friends. He sees harvest festivals, garlands of wheat braided by nimble hands, songs carried by evening winds, small fires burning in earthen pits, branches laden with offerings, children dancing in circles to mimic the sun's eternal path, olives roasting, wine poured into communal cups. And then, a candle-lit room, simple, stone-walled, holding a family gathered around a loaf of bread, still warm from the oven. Hands reach out, first the mothers, then the fathers, then the children, breaking the bread gently, as though sharing not just food, but the love that brought it into being. He breathes in. The scent of flour rises from the mill, soft, powdery, ancient. The smell is both humble and holy, reminding him of how essential this work truly is. He opens his eyes. The workshop returns to view, quiet, dim, waiting. He grips the wooden handle of the millstone, feeling the smooth grooves where hands have held it before him. The handle fits perfectly into his palm, as though shaped just for him. He presses gently. The stone shifts. A low murmur escapes from beneath it, a sound like an old throat clearing, like earth waking slowly. He presses again. The stone moves a little farther. Its movement is heavy, but not unfriendly, resistant only in the way all ancient things are, still gathering themselves, still remembering how to move. And then, with a soft, deep exhale, it turns. The first rotation is slow, as if the wheel is adjusting to the rhythm of the night. The second comes easier. The stone glides along its circular path, each movement whispering softly across the wooden frame. A low, soothing hum fills the room. It spreads through the floor, through the shelves, through the air thick with dust, a sound that resembles a chant, a meditation, a lullaby sung by stone. The baker feels his breath sinking to the rhythm. Inhale, exhale, wheel turning, dust rising, flower blooming like pale smoke in the lamplight. The room slows with the motion. Time loosens its grip. The world narrows into one simple truth. The circle turns, and life continues. He pushes the millstone again. It moves with him,
not resisting, not struggling, but collaborating, as though acknowledging his part in this ancient lineage. He adds grain to the top. The kernels spill in a soft rush, tapping lightly against the stone. The wheel grinds them gently, breaking them down, releasing their inner substance, the way dawn releases light from darkness. The sound deepens. It becomes rhythmic, a soft heartbeat that pulses through the room. It spreads through the floor, through the shelves, through the air thick with dust, a sound that resembles a chant, a meditation, a lullaby sung by stone. The baker feels his breath sinking to the rhythm. Inhale, exhale, wheel turning, dust rising, flower blooming like pale smoke in the lamplight. The room slows with the motion. Time loosens its grip. The world narrows into one simple truth. The circle turns, and life continues. He pushes the millstone again. It moves with him, not resisting, not struggling, but collaborating, as though acknowledging his part in this ancient lineage. He adds grain to the top. The kernels spill in a soft rush, tapping lightly against the stone. The wheel grinds them gently, breaking them down, releasing their inner substance, the way dawn releases light from darkness. The sound deepens. It becomes rhythmic, a soft heartbeat that pulses through the room. Perhaps this is how the gods once heard the workings of humanity, in slow, repetitive mantras born from effort and devotion. He pushes the wheel again. He falls into its pace, a pace not measured in seconds or minutes, but in breaths, in turning arcs, in quiet surrender to repetition. The millstone turns. The room becomes a circle. The night becomes a circle. His thoughts spiral gently, not outward, but inward, towards something essential. Whispers tell us that circles hold memory in their shape, that what moves in circles never truly disappears. It simply returns in another form. As the wheel turns, he feels the boundaries of time slip. Past and present fold into one another, like flour blending into water. He imagines all those who turned this wheel before him, their strength, their fatigue, their hopes, and he feels connected to them, not by blood, not by name, but by purpose. By the simple, sacred need to feed the body and comfort the soul. The millstone slows. Its hum softens. Flour dust settles on the wooden frame, thin as moonlight. The baker releases the handle. The wheel completes one final rotation on its own, a graceful closing of an ancient dance, and then rests. Silence settles over the workshop like a soft blanket. But it is not empty silence. It is full, alive.
It is said that every city has a place where morning first lays its hand, a single quiet threshold where the light arrives before it belongs anywhere else. A narrow ledge, a high stone, an unnoticed archway, somewhere that has watched the night loosen its hold more times than any living soul can remember. On this morning, as the last deep blue of night fades into the light of something new, the baker finds himself standing at such a place. The path that led him here is simple, rising gently along the slope of one of Rome's hills. The stones are still cool beneath his sandals, carrying the memory of starlight more than the promise of day. He walks with a basket in his arms, the loaves inside still warm, still breathing small curls of fragrant steam into the chill air. Ahead, at the edge of the hill, a small archway waits. It is not grand. It bears no inscription. No emperor ordered it to be built. It is a modest curve of stone, its sides weathered, its top traced with hairline cracks filled with pale dust. Years of wind and rain have softened its edges, but it still stands, a steadfast witness to the daily meeting of darkness and light. Beneath the arch, the world opens. Through it, he can see the faint line of the horizon, a delicate seam where the last shade of night clings stubbornly to the slowly brightening sky.
The first pale glow of dawn gathers there, thin as breath, soft as the inside of a shell. He moves closer. The archway frames the view like a painting held in a stone embrace. Beyond it, rooftops are still shadowed, huddled together like sleeping animals. The distant hills lie in a faint bluish haze, their shapes barely carved from the dark. Thin threads of smoke curl upward from a few scattered chimneys, the first waping hearths of Rome, whispering to the sky that the day has already begun in quiet corners. The baker stops beneath the arch. He sets his basket down beside him on the stone, its woven sides creaking softly. The loaves inside stir the air with the scent of warm crust and soft crumb, the perfume of nourishment, of work completed, of small daily miracles. He stands there in the fragile pause between what was and what will be. Night has not fully left, day has not fully arrived. He is standing in a doorway between worlds. Whispers tell us that beginnings do not announce themselves with trumpets. They arrive like this, gentle, uncertain, a slow brightening on the horizon of our awareness. He breathes. The air is cool, tinged with the faint dampness of dew. Somewhere below, a dog barks once and then falls silent, as if reconsidering the need to disturb the moment. A bird, braver than the others, tries a tentative note, a single sound that hangs in the air and then disappears into the widening sky. The arch above him holds the early light like a vessel. Its inner curve, still mostly shadowed, begins to catch the first hints of gold, a subtle wash that deepens with every passing breath. The baker leans one shoulder against the stone. He feels its coolness, its solidity, its age. This archway has likely stood here for centuries, through years of triumph and fear, through days of celebration and days of mourning, through mornings so ordinary no one thought to mark them, and mornings so significant that they changed the course of those who walked beneath it. Some believe that stones remember the first time light touched them, that in each dawn after, they await that moment with quiet devotion. He looks out again at the horizon. The sky is changing. What was a dark line a few short breaths ago is now a soft band of muted rose, fading into gentle gold, rising into lingering blue. The sun itself is not yet visible, but its promise is beginning to stain the world. Beneath the silence, he feels the weight of every dawn that came before this one. Every morning when a farmer rose early and walked toward his fields, his boots brushing dew from the grass. Every morning when a mother lit a small fire in her hearth and warmed water for her family. Every morning when soldiers prepared to march, tying their sandals with practiced hands, casting quick glances at the brightening sky. Every morning when children stirred awake, eyes blinking at the life spilling into their small rooms. And far before even that, the first dawns of a younger room, when houses were fewer, streets were rougher, and the city's name had not yet grown heavy with history. All of those mornings have flowed through this same light, this same sky, this slow unfurling of day. The archway gathers them, weaves them together, and offers them to him now as one continuous breath. In forgotten corners of the world, it is said that dawn is the hour when the soul and the body are closest to agreement, when the mind is not yet crowded with tasks and the heart can still hear itself. The baker feels this truth. He has walked through an entire night of Rome's quiet secrets, the forum's abandoned stones, the river that carried forgotten prayers, the arch of echoes, the market sleeping beneath the moon, the hidden garden, the watchful lamp, the shadowed shrine, the millstone's eternal circle. All of those places now feel like chapters pressed gently between the pages of his memory, soft, fragrant, fragile. He carries them with him the way he carries the loaves at his feet, not as burdens, but as offerings. He glances down at the bread. Their surfaces are lightly cracked, the crusts kissed by heat, marked by the pattern of his hands. Each loaf bears the story of the night's labor, the mixing, the waiting, the shaping, the rising, and the heat. They are, in their own way, small suns waiting to be broken open to release their warmth. The horizon brightens. The pale gold grows stronger, seeping into the edges of the rooftops, tracing the outlines of tiles and chimneys, catching on the tips of trees. The first true rays of morning begin to form, thin, eager strands of light reaching over the edge of the world toward the city that has not yet fully awakened. The archway catches them. Its stone blushes with color. The cracks that seemed dull and gray in the night now glow like fine lines of fire. Dust motes drift in the air beneath it, each one illuminated for a heartbeat before vanishing back into invisibility. The baker's face warms. His shadow appears on the ground behind him, stretched and softened, a dark echo pulled gently by the rising sun. He feels a quiet understanding settle in his chest. There is no revelation, no sudden insight, no voice from the heavens. Only this: night yields, day arrives, the world continues. He is a small part of it, a single figure beneath a simple archway, holding a basket of fresh bread as Rome stirs at the edge of awakening. Yet in this moment, the smallness does not diminish him. It comforts him. All lives, he realizes, move in cycles. We rise, we work, we rest. We hope, we grieve, we love. We watch night become day and day become night again. We walk through doorways again and again, rarely pausing to notice that every threshold offers us a chance to acknowledge that something has ended and something has begun. He looks up again at the arch one last time. It no longer feels like stone alone. It feels like a silent companion, one that has watched countless people, in countless ages, stand exactly where he now stands. Some of them must have come with heavy hearts, some with joy, some with questions too large to fully name. And yet, the arch did not judge them. It simply framed their moment, offered them a view, and let the light wash over them as it always had. Perhaps that is all a doorway needs to do. The sky now glows fully, the sun just beginning to lift its bright round face above the edge of the world. Rome's rooftops blush in its touch. Smoke curls more steadily from more chimneys. Somewhere, a cart begins to roll. Somewhere else, a voice calls softly from an open window. The city is waking. The baker lifts his basket. The loaves are ready, the morning is ready, he is ready. He steps forward. For a heartbeat, as he passes beneath the curve of the arch, he feels held, as if the doorway itself presses a blessing onto his shoulders, light as dust, warm as breath. Then he is through. The world beyond the arch is no longer the deep blue of late night, but the soft amber of early morning. Streets begin to show their lines, walls seem less like shadows and more like homes. He walks down the hill, each step carrying him from dream into the gentle buzz of waking life. Behind him, the archway remains, the place where dawn first touched Rome this morning. By the time another day has ended and another night has deepened, the arch will be waiting again, ready and silent as always. Perhaps it was never meant to be anything grand. Perhaps it was meant to be exactly this, a small, unassuming threshold where the city can quietly remember that every day is a new beginning, no matter how many days have come before. As the baker moves into the waking streets, we feel the last traces of the night's wanderings begin to settle like soft dust, not gone, but folded gently into memory. And the chapter closes, not with certainty, not with answers, but with a breath. The first breath of morning, offered gently to Rome and to us as we drift at last into sleep.
And so, as the sun finally rises over ancient Rome, our baker's quiet morning draws to a close. The bread is warm, the streets are waking, and the soft serenity of the early hours begins to fade into day. But here, in this peaceful corner of time, you can linger a little longer. Let the gentle rhythm of Rome before dawn stay with you, guiding your breath, calming your thoughts, and easing you into whatever rest you need. Thank you for joining this journey tonight, and for letting Twilight Tale be part of your peaceful routine. If your eyes are still open, feel free to explore more bedtime stories from the ancient world. If they're already closing, then may your dreams wander softly through history's quietest moments. Sleep well, and until next time, good night from Twilight Tale.